pollution is right from the beginning of extraction and production itself, and not just when it's thrown away. Plastic pollution as a narrative is not a waste pollution alone. There are also issues of how the biggest producing and consuming countries of the world have been sending plastic waste to even countries like India, and Malaysia, and Indonesia, and Vietnam.
Roshan, thank you so much for taking out the time to talk to Global Compass and StratNews Global.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Sure. This is quite disheartening news about India contributing the world's fifth of plastic pollution. However, it is not the largest producer. So, what exactly is the dichotomy and where is the problem exactly? Because the University of Leeds has talked of unmanaged plastic or unmanaged, plastic pollution. So, can you give us a brief overview of that report and what exactly it means?
So I'd like to start off by saying it's a kind of a problematic report, and how the report came just before the Busan INC as such, and so I think I know it made a lot of news, and certain circles, especially the environmental circle, it made quite a lot of news, and it also made popular news because when India gets ranked for such a negative thing, you do get to have a lot of circulation, and in also some sense an acknowledgement how big the challenge is. But I say it's a problematic report because it has a very small definition, of what it is trying to measure, and it does not look at the history and the legacy of waste, and it seems to look at plastic pollution from the perspective of after it is thrown away. It does not consider production, so I think the dichotomy that you talk about is, even with being less a country with low production, we are topping, or they say we are topping the plastic pollution scenario in the world as such, so I think there is a huge challenge in how it is framed, how it is placed, and it does not look at one. Plastic pollution is right from the beginning of extraction and production itself, and not just when it's thrown away. Plastic pollution as a narrative is not a waste pollution alone. There are also issues of how the biggest producing and consuming countries of the world have been sending plastic waste to even countries like India, and Malaysia, and Indonesia, and Vietnam. So I think it is a very problematic report as such. Maybe that's how I'd like to say it. So the
Right.
dichotomy is, yeah, they just looked at it as waste, using waste
And
as, yeah,
the global south global north divide, I mean, it is there everywhere,
exactly,
and even over
exactly.
here.
Exactly. And then they also look at per capita consumption and where does their plastic waste go to. So they have been shipping plastic waste to developing countries for a long time. And when 2017, when China said no, that's when we realized that it is such a big problem. But I think I just wanted to add one more point. Like if you look at 2017, there was a very important report that came out which kind of said only 9% of all plastic ever produced has been recycled, and the rest have been either incinerated or in some form or the other lying in the environment. So if you just look at today and then call India to be the worst polluter without considering the history as well as the lack of the that you can't look at just managing plastic waste, right? You have to look at production, and also all that we produced, majority of it is still lying in the environment, which means you can't use a single small segment and say this nation has produced, especially a developing country like ours. Yeah.
Right. And okay, let's keep that report aside for a few minutes. Let's keep University of Leeds aside. But the fact is that it is a visible problem to all of us in India, right? I mean, I think I would like to call it solid waste management, but okay, even if you talk of plastic, you have these huge landfills, especially, the city I live, just on the outskirts, you have these ominous looking landfills, and it is rather scary, depressing, scary to see it. Now again, even these landfills are increasing along with usage and everything. So clearly there is a problem. We cannot deny that there is a problem here. So can you give a elucidate on what sector exactly, what where exactly is the plastic pollution happening the highest? Which sector is it, and what can be done to curb it?
So I think, yeah, I think I just agree with. Let me start out by agreeing with what you say. We do have a problem. I'm not denying that we don't have a problem. We do have a very, very big problem of solid waste management and plastic waste management in India. It is visible, and it's not just Delhi. Every city actually now has piles of waste. One is partly rotting and partly just burning also, and I think that's a huge problem. And I think for us, I am part of a movement called Zero Waste Himalaya, where a lot of our work is on plastic waste. And what we find is that a huge amount of plastic waste comes from food packaging. For us, we have been conducting waste and brand audit since 2018, and every year it is increasing day by day. Like, it comes from food packaging, and when I say food, it's food and beverage, and after that, personal care, and then then there are other items that are there. But having said that, I think we also are getting a lot of plastic pollution from things like agriculture. Also, some of the niche agriculture is using a lot of plastic. So, but then this is from a individual consumer point of view. But I think packaging industry seems to be a really big thing in India, and that also very one time single use kind of packaging, and then also problematic packaging like multi-layered plastic, which is non-recyclable. So these are all piling up, and partly we do have a solid waste management problem, but it's hugely, when it comes to plastic, production issue also. We are being constantly fed with unnecessary single-use plastic, as well as not plastic that cannot be recycled as such. So they end up just lying in everywhere, including, like you say, outside Delhi. You know.
Absolutely. So clearly, awareness is a very big part of the solution, right? And in certain cities, you do have certain companies which are trying to, uh, not package their products in plastic. You have these cartons that come to us when we order something. Of course, the product. Okay, let's talk about cosmetics. Let's talk about a face wash or a moisturizer. The tube is plastic, but the packaging is a cardboard with little pieces of paper in it. So that kind of seems okay. There's some effort being made to not the packet, outside is not plastic. But I think that's too little. I think much more needs to be done, is what my personal feeling is. But when it comes to, again, the global south, when it comes to Asia, we have how do we balance this? How do we actually make this happen, that we consume or we use less and less plastic, and we are very mindful of sustainable choices? How can we actually do that?
That's a
Tough.
really deep question, right? I think
Yeah,
for me, let me just try and break it down a bit, right?
sure,
So I think, like you say, individual awareness is important, individual action is important, because it all adds up. But I think fundamentally, if you look at India, we have a very interesting plastic waste management rules, which was, I think, really forward thinking. So it's the extended producer responsibility rules, 2022. So this is the first time we actually have, under the plastic waste management rules, calling out companies to take full responsibility of all the plastic they produce. And they are very clear: it's producers, importers, and brand owners. So imagine if this actually really happened. So for me, I think that is a very powerful regulatory statement, right? I know it's not being implemented. There are problems in definition of single use, and also at the end of it, I think it also, the extended producer responsibility does not look at designing out, like you say, it should design out the unnecessary plastic from production. That is not happening. But I think you asked a very deep fundamental question about what do we do. I think plastic pollution is actually intersects with climate crisis also, right? It's pretty much it is the pretty much the same. So it and how did we reach here is, I think we have had a very limited definition of growth is and what happiness is, and we have been constantly bombarded with products, right? And so for me, I think we actually really need to really redefine what sustainability is, not because it is the cool thing to do, but for me it is the right thing to do. Because this is, I'm in Darjeeling in September and wearing a half shirt, and just down there where I live, there is a huge landfill, and I'm afraid it'll start burning because every winter it burns, right? And so in that sense, I think, like you say, all of us have to start taking sustainable choices and sustainable lifestyles. But I think even more than that, I think companies have to really move towards sustainability, and not for greenwashing, right? Like you say, your cosmetic could come in a tube, but it's just covered in paper. Or like, for example, even within cosmetics and personal care, there is still microbeads in a lot of our products in India, whereas a lot of European Union has said no to microbeads. Whereas the same company will have no microbeads in their products in Europe, but will have microbeads in India. So I think we have to have a global perspective, but also like an individual action. And then ultimately it is, I think, planet over profit has to come by. I think we are living in this generation of huge inequity, and I think we just can't live like this anymore. So I don't think I've answered your question, but
No,
I
but
think
yeah,
it,
it is
it
not an
is,
easy question
yeah,
to
it is a
answer.
philosophical question also, right?
Exactly,
But
exactly. And
it's also,
it is
yeah,
unsustainable. We have reached a point of
exactly,
unsustainability, and we need to recognize that. And that is
yeah,
what we've been trying to,
yeah,
like, even Global Compass. We launched Global Compass on Earth Day. So for this
right,
reason, we are
right,
trying to spread as much awareness as we can. It is not easy, but
yeah.
what you said, you talked of inequity. You talked of the fact that these companies are dumping microbeads in India, and they're not making products with microbeads for their own customers abroad. So again, I'm coming back to the global south, global north divide. I think that's a huge. So again, this problem of pollution, plastic pollution, solid waste management, it also comes down to poverty, the basic issue of poverty vis-a-vis pollution. Am I right? Or, I mean, do you see any?
Ah, that's a challenging thing, right? Because it also, if you look at the other dimension of it, so in the waste and brand audit we've been doing since 2018, we've consistently find the global big brands like polluting our mountains with their plastic waste, right? And so you have PepsiCo, Coke, Unilever, Nestle, Mondelez, Perfetti, and then definitely Indian brands like ITC and like Dabur and all that. But having said that, I don't think it's also a matter of poverty alone, because I think, for example, uh, like look at some of the products that are pushed to us, saying it makes it accessible. It's the narrative, right? A shampoo sachet is one of the biggest challenging things to pick up. It's tiny, it's cheap, but it is presented that no, everyone should have access to shampoo sachets. But also the same shampoo sachet is such a problematic product to pick up. It's multi-layered and it's thrown all over the place. It's tiny. Most waste managers will not even pick it. So I think, not it's. I don't think it's just about poverty alone. I'd actually say it's also about justice. So you want your neighborhood and your country to be clean, and you dump all the waste. And I feel, for me, going back to the original document that you started, is like So it's convenient for people who have polluted the planet since the production of plastic to say India has a problem. We do have a problem, but you also need to own up. Plastic pollution solution does not lie in just pointing fingers within a narrow framework of whatever you choose to study and say, this is the problem. Because I think that is a challenge. But having said that, I don't really think poverty is a problem, in terms of plastic pollution. It is actually, like, look at India. A lot of the kabaddi walas actually are the main recyclers of our nation. If you really look at it, our waste management systems are not so organized. So the kabaddi walas actually really provide a huge societal and environmental role by picking up at least the recycled plastic as such. So yeah,
It's a service. It's a huge service they do, and one
true,
should one
true.
should recognize that. No, but what I'm let me take that shampoo sachet example. That was a beautiful example you used. Now, say someone who is a daily laborer, daily wage laborer. Now, if that person were to spend 2 rupees and pick up a shampoo sachet for use, I mean, I was basically talking about poverty from that angle. But ultimately, what I think you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is whether it is a lower income country, whether it is a higher income country, everybody's polluting. Either they're dumping it on other countries, either they're doing it themselves, we're doing it ourselves. But either way, pollution is a reality, pollution is happening, and the two, I mean, everybody, be it lower income, higher income, we all need to get together, consider it a global problem, and work towards it. Am I right? Is that the basic sense of this whole issue?
That is one side of my argument, but the other side of the argument, which similar to the sachet part of it, is that there is a need being created of products that you actually don't need, for the sake of saying, oh, you will make it accessible. Look at like India is has a huge problem with type 2 diabetes, right? We also have a huge problem with hypertension, and we have a huge problem with obesity on the rise. And that, on the other hand, comes from excessive processed, ultra processed, hyper packaged food, and all of them are processed, and I mean, like, packaged in multi-layer plastic as such. But the question that we should be asking is, everyone has a right to good nutritious food, uh, rather than saying, can it come packaged in plastic? And for me, lot of convenience and angles that convenience is talked about, but indirectly, look at, we still, a lot of those products are still being allowed to be advertised. Our celebrities advertise it, our sports people advertise it, and a lot of them we know are addictive and bad for our health,
And they
and
don't use
comes
it.
in,
The
yeah, and then
celebrities
they
don't
come,
use it themselves.
I know, and then it comes in plastic packaging, right? So I think what I'm trying to also say is, I think there is growing awareness of these problems in the West, and so these companies, these global companies, are repackaging all these products and pushing it on us also. So, and poverty might be one line of it, but the other side of it is, we are producing ill health by eating them and then throwing them also, right? Look at fast fashion. Look at how much plastic we are wearing.
Our
So
first
it's,
episode was on Fast Fashion, Earth Day, and we talked of, yeah, absolutely,
yeah, yeah,
absolutely. These all these things are connected very closely, and we all need to get this collective approach and find solutions. Because
true,
it is
true,
it is very disconcerting, it is very disturbing to see the
true,
way the landfills are filling up, and you
exactly,
know they cause cancer, they cause all
yep,
kinds of congenital diseases,
exactly.
and
And, like, not just that.
microplastics.
Yeah, yeah. Ultra processed food now is not just about physical health. Like, it contributes to mental ill health also. And so there is more and more studies, and we also know that a lot of chemicals leach into the food products also. And so yeah, high time we wake up. Yeah,
Right. So I hope those who are watching this show, at least, they get some kind of a perspective as to how serious this issue actually is. We don't consider, we're so caught up in our daily activities and earning our bread and butter and trying to, make our own aspirations come true, that we forget about these issues. I hope that shows like this at least, make people more aware and more mindful of what they are doing. So, Roshan, again, thank you very, very
Thank
much for
you.
coming. Thank you for giving us that.
Thank you
I
for the,
know it turned out to be a rather philosophical show. I guess both of us are in that mood. I don't know today,
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
important
Definitely,
conversation. And thank
definitely.
you very, very much. And I hope to
Thank you
stay
for
in
calling
touch
me.
with you
Yep.
and keep calling
Sure.
you back.
Definitely. Sure. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yep.